Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
PD Beats here from Popternative, speaking to Andrew Dabb about Resident Evil dropping on Netflix July 14th. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
This is really exciting. First thing that kind of comes to mind as a big fan of the franchise as a whole, the video games and the movies, is you have an opportunity to get the original fans. You also have an opportunity to get some new fans that aren't familiar with the franchise. Is that a mindset that was kind of around throughout the process of making this series?
I think so. I mean, look, ideally, people, this can be their first experience with Resident Evil, and they'll get to the end of the show and they'll be like, I want to play these games. And they'll dive into the games, which are fantastic. Or they'll get to the end of it and they'll be like, you know what? I want to watch the movies, the Mila Jovovich movies. And they'll be able to watch those. And it all kind of feels, even though it's not exactly the same, it all feels like it's in the same world.
And how important was it to kind of have a little bit of those Easter eggs, which they're in there and everything, but also keep it fresh, new characters we're not familiar with? How, like, was it hard to kind of do a little bit of both of that? Like, it's a new show, it's a live action series, but in the world people are familiar with. What was that like?
I think, we kind of went into it, we're like, look, this needs to be, accessible for hopefully as many people as possible. Because when I came to Resident Evil, I didn't know anything about it. You know what I mean? And you want people to kind of fall in love with this world and these characters. And if you're going to characters with a lot of history, again, if we're not going back in time and starting from Raccoon City, which we weren't because we were developed at the same time as the most recent movie, which literally did that, then is it better to kind of have a new set of eyes that can go out and kind of start to explore this world of Resident Evil? And the great thing is, like, there's 30 years of lore. We didn't want to go and cram 30 years of lore into 8 hours of TV. So we started to kind of dole it out bits and pieces of breadcrumbs and Easter eggs and things like that. But if we're lucky enough to go into a season 2, that will speed up quite a bit. Because now our characters are in this world. Now let's go off and let's meet some of the people we all know and love.
I can't even imagine the first conversation about like the starting point of like the series. Like, I can't even imagine what that's like.
It was interesting because it was, when they were kind of like, look, we did the movies, we love the movies. The games are kind of their own thing. What can we do that kind of builds them up, but also does its own thing? And that's really what we try to do in this show. Boom,
the series, absolutely. Resident Evil, so many elements, the geek culture, like sci-fi culture. For me, it's always been the horror thriller component of it that stands out for me. Can you talk a little bit about that, kind of providing the horror component in it as well? Because it's sci-fi, you know what I mean? And labs, creatures, and we get that. But you can't have Resident Evil without a little bit of like scaring people.
Of course. And, Resident Evil's always been an action horror franchise, but we really put the horror first. You know what I mean? And in two different ways. One is just making it scary. The other thing is to make something scary, you have to care about the people that are going through the scares. If it's just 4 random people in the woods, you don't know anything about them, who cares, right?
Yeah.
But if you know them, you know their stories, you know how they react to each other, then it's like you're not just watching the horror in a great, when it's done right, you're there with them. You know what I mean? It's not you watch them reacting to a noise behind them. You hear that noise and you react to that noise behind you. You know what I mean? So in terms of building up the characters, that was really important to make the horror work.
Absolutely. And people are going to be able to see it July 14th, Resident Evil dropping on Netflix. Andrew, so great chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.